I want to take time with a very, very important issue and deal with it in a substantive way, not just do a hit and run and jump up and down like so many do. American citizenship. American citizenship. American citizenship means something. It's very, very, very valuable. Men and women in this country have fought. They have fought wars. They have made enormous sacrifices for American citizenship. You see, in a republic, the people establish their government. The people establish their government. I'm not talking about pure democracy, which is a disaster, because we don't want people to have the right to mobilize and vote to deny you of your rights, to attack your unalienable rights. So I'm not talking about mobocracy or mass, rule or anything of that sort. I'm talking about Republican low-R rule. The people establish their government. And when you have a representative republic, the people choose their representatives. And whether they serve in state capitals or the national capital, those representatives are supposed to reflect the mores, the traditions, the culture of the people who send them to pass laws. The people who go to Washington or state capitals aren't supposed to go there for the purpose of changing the electorate or changing citizenship in a state or in the country. Because then those people who are governing against the people. Now, I keep hearing discussions about the demographics of this nation and how it's changing, how Latinos or Hispanics, based on immigration patterns and birth patterns, are becoming a bigger and bigger percentage of the population, and therefore it is essential that if a political party wants to survive or a politician wants to survive, then they need to address that ethnic group or that racial group. This is quintessential racism that is destructive of the civil society. And we Americans, regardless of our race, regardless of our color, regardless of our heritage, we Americans, and by that I mean citizens and legal immigrants, we must fight this. All of us. We have temporary politicians who are prepared to destroy the fundamental nature of this society in order to achieve short-term electoral victories. They do it with propaganda. They do it with race baiting. They do it with appeals to emotion and passion. But I'm telling you right now, whether you're a recent immigrant, legal, or a long-time American citizen, this will destroy American society, the civil society. It is not humane and it is not compassionate to destroy the American society. It's just not. We have a group of politicians, and we've had them now for several decades, who seek to change this society in order to strengthen their position in government. But that's not the way it's supposed to work. That's not the way it's supposed to work. People can't just cross your border, whomever they are, wherever they come from, have a child, and that child is all of a sudden an American citizen, and at the age of 21 can legally invite parents, grandparents, cousins, brothers, and sisters to come into the United States. A nation has a right to survive. It has a right to have borders. That's why we call them nation states. It has a right to protect those borders and to enforce the laws that seek to protect those borders. When we have conniving politicians of both parties who seek temporary political gains by tribalizing this nation, by balkanizing this nation, by using citizenship as a vote-getting tool rather than holding it up high as an aspiration, then we're being destroyed from within. This is not a nativist view or anything of the sort. This is reality. This is reality. We have a president who is perfectly willing to destroy this society in order to advance his political career. That's been his entire life. That's been his entire life. Now, a little bit of history. Claremont Institute senior fellow and California State University professor Edwin Erler, a friend of mine, reflecting Aristotle's observation, he wrote, "A radical change in the character of the citizens would be tantamount to a regime change just as surely as a revolution in its political principles." Most of the founders talked about this, including George Washington. You want to invite people into your nation, but you have to determine who they are and what they're coming for, and whether their presence in your society will help to strengthen the culture and the traditions of that society. Otherwise, why invite them? You're not seeking to import the mores and traditions and customs of other countries, although people who come here are certainly free to practice them, because we all have ancestors from different places. That's fine. But the goal should not be to superimpose those views on the rest of society, whomever you are or wherever you're from. In 1965, Lyndon Johnson, so much bad came from Lyndon Johnson. He signed the Hart-Celler Act. And for the first time, that bill introduced a system of chain migration. Chain migration. The emphasis would no longer be on the preservation of American society and the consent of the governed. Now, aliens themselves would decide who comes to the United States through family reunification. And you hear it when you hear arguments about the DREAM Act. No longer are we, as the current citizens of this country, allowed to decide who comes or not. Aliens who come here and have children, their children get to decide who comes here and who doesn't. As a result of this 1965 law, illegal immigration soared from 2.5 million in the 1950s to 4.5 million in the 1970s to nearly 7.5 million in the 1980s to 10 million in the 1990s. And I guess we're stuck at 12 million because I never hear that number going up. It's been 12 million for the last 5 years. The late author Theodore White, who was no conservative, is a big lib. He wrote that the Immigration Act of 1965 changed all previous patterns, and in so doing probably changed the future of America. It was noble, revolutionary, and probably the most thoughtless of the many acts of the Great Society. In the 1960s, Cesar Chavez, one of the founders of the United Farm Workers, the UFW union, vehemently opposed illegal immigration, arguing it undermined his efforts to unionize farm workers and improve working conditions and wages for American citizen workers. Even then, leftists were defending citizenship. The UFW even reported illegal immigrants to the Immigration and Naturalization Service at the time, INS. In 1969, Chavez led a march, accompanied by Ralph Abernathy, president of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, and Senator Walter Mondale, along the border with Mexico, protesting the farmers' use of illegal immigrants. It's only a little over 40 years ago. Times have changed, haven't they? But most unions reversed course, and today they lobbied to confer amnesty and ultimately citizenship on illegal aliens, because the unions view the large influx of both legal and illegal immigrants as a new source of political clout that favors their allies in the Democratic Party and potentially adds membership to their own dwindling numbers. And Democratic politicians seek the same thing for votes. We're supposed to destroy our society to accommodate politicians who won't be here 20 or 30 years from now. Your children will be. And under the Hart-Celler Act, upon turning 21 years of age, the child can sponsor additional family members for citizenship. So from the statist perspective, the pool of future administrative state constituents and sympathetic voters is potentially bottomless. You don't have to believe me. Listen to the commentators today. Is that not what they're saying? So there he is. He goes to Texas and he speaks at El Paso. And he says a number of things that are flat out lies. And for you folks who are Americans who happen to be Hispanic, do not allow the demagogues to successfully appeal to your emotions. That's what they're all about. That's what they're doing. We have 9% unemployment in this country. That affects everybody. We have a horrific housing market given to us by the federal government based on liberal policies over a period of decades. That affects everybody. We have skyrocketing food and fuel prices as a result of policies of obstruction instituted by this administration. That affects everybody. When you go to the gas pump, it knows no race. When you go to the grocery store, it knows no race. When your house is underwater, it knows no race. The way a responsible, statesman-like president behaves is to talk about the American people. Not Hispanics, blacks, white males, what have you. The American people. Not about Muslims, Christians, Jews, the American people. But he can't do it because he knows he can't win that way. So divide and conquer. That's where he's at. The post-racial presidency is race all the time. They're polling based on race. So here's Obama, El Paso, Texas, yesterday. Cut one, go.
So one way to strengthen the middle class in America is to reform the immigration system so that there's no longer a massive underground economy that exploits a cheap source of labor while depressing wages for everybody else. I want incomes for middle class families to rise again. I want prosperity in this country to be widely shared. I want everybody to be able to reach that American dream, and that's why immigration reform is an economic imperative.
This man always has his economics wrong, doesn't he? Well, if that's true, then why have a border patrol? Why have any laws that obstruct immigration from anywhere in the world? Open the gates. Let everybody in. Somehow, according to Obama, that will increase middle-class wages in this country. Just like not drilling for oil will lower the price of oil. Just like taxing businesses will somehow increase prosperity.
Mark Levin.